Hey everybody, thanks for clicking on the link in this one. So if you are new here, we are talking Red Sox like we always do, and specifically in this video, I am talking about the potential extensions that the Red Sox could, and in my opinion should, be giving out to some of their young players. Now, the guys that we're going to be going over here are going to be like Roman Anthony, Kristian Campbell. We might talk about Garrett Crochet a little bit. We might even talk about like Tristan Katz. And so if you're interested in that type of stuff, we're going to go kind of in depth with it, so let's just jump right in. Part of my thought kind of was stemming earlier this week, but Jeff Passan came out with something that really fueled my fire on wanting to talk about this some more. And basically, it's just an article talking crap about how the Red Sox have not been spending money at any point, really in the last few seasons. They just haven't been spending money for what their market share is. And this first paragraph, if you guys want to read it, you can. But really, it's here. Uh, they need pitching. They got pitching. They're better. It's just there's more out there, and maybe that's what January and February are for. The Red Sox to stop acting like a team with the 13th highest payroll in MLB and start acting like the Boston Red Sox, who until the COVID-19 pandemic never had an opening day payroll lower than sixth in baseball this century. Twice they were first, 8 times second, and during those years, it's no coincidence that the Boston Red Sox won 4 World Series. I mean, it's pretty black and white. This is what we've been talking about forever. I know Jeff Passan's made this point before. Everybody's kind of made this point before, but the Red Sox just purely aren't spending money. And when you look at the payroll for the team, this is Spot Track. They track payroll for the all of Major League Baseball here in different sports, but we're looking at 2015 here. The Red Sox have the third highest payroll in baseball, $183 million. Let's look at the 2024 season. 11th highest payroll, $188 million. And so between 2015 to last season, 2024, we're talking almost a decade here, they've increased payroll by $5 million. Pretty pathetic, to be perfectly honest. But, if they're going to be spending in this way and they're not going to be going over the luxury tax, which I know, and I fell for it too earlier this offseason. They're like, yeah, we're going to go over the luxury tax if we sign Juan Soto and stuff. And I do think if they did sign Juan Soto that they would have gone over the luxury tax, because you have to at that point. Like, you can't just sign Juan Soto and be like, we're good. But now that they didn't, and they didn't sign some of these other big free agents, I think the directive has to be they're staying under the luxury tax, right? Like, it's very clear that they're going to be under the luxury tax. They're going to push it. They're going to push it again, but they're just going to stay under it. And I don't really understand why. I mean, the luxury tax thresholds, like when you're talking about it, there's tiers to everything. And so when you are talking luxury tax, you look down here and there's not a whole lot of penalties until you like get to really like the third CBA, which is $281 million. I mean, the first year you get a 20% surcharge on overage for everything in this range between 241 to 261. So in reality, like 20% of 20 million, what are we talking here? $4 million. Like, that's what they would be charged going between here. $4 million. That's it, to go $20 million over the CBA. And then if they were go to the next one, they have the standard CBA plus an extra 12%. So it'd be another $4 million, so $8 million plus another 12% on those overage. So what's 12% of $20 million? I'm not like a math whiz on the top of my head, but we're talking, what, under $3 million. We're talking just about $10 million to go $40 million over the CBT. Like, it's ridiculous that the Red Sox aren't willing to do this type of thing when it would very clearly make their team better. I could rant on this all day, and I know that this is a huge point of frustration for everybody. But in reality, we're going off the assumption here that the Red Sox want to stay under the CBT in the future. And the best way to do this is to lock up your young players, which I think that is frustrating, again, on the Red Sox part, is they haven't been consistent about locking up the guys they need to lock up. Now, give them some credit. They have locked up Cedar Rafaela. They got him on a really nice contract, a $50 million 8-year extension. There's a club option attached to it. In reality, $66 million for 9 years is what you're paying Cedar Rafaela, which is great. Rafaela, could he be a star in the league? There's a chance. Is it more likely he's going to be a defensive star in the league with an okay bat? That's more likely. But at the same time, he's a guy that could put up 3 or 4 or even 5 WAR a season just based on his defensive value alone, and he's going to give you a little bit of pop from the bat. batting, seventh to ninth regularly. But he has the potential to be like, a number two type hitter, a Bo Bichette type kind of guy, maybe with a little bit less power, maybe like a 20 home run thing. Cedar Rafaela could do that. I mean, he's got like good hit tool. I mean, 246 batting average. That's not great, but I mean, like we're talking AAA last year in 2023, 14 home runs, 312 batting average, 988 OPS. Like there's potential still in there for him to do this, and 15 home runs in a rookie year is really nice. So locking up a guy like this early on, great. Brian Bayo, they did the same thing. It was a kind of a shorter term contract, but they still locked him up. So that's what you like to see. But again, these aren't like needle movers long term. These are like you're saving a little bit of money here. Like how much was Cedar Rafael really going to make in this time frame? Like he's got a $66 million contract, but realistically speaking, like maybe like 80 to 90 million dollars in this type of range if he does well. And I mean, he would have to do really well, I think, to go beyond that. So he saved a little bit of money, but not a ton. Brian Bayo, same type of way. I know people were talking about him like he's an ace guy. He's more like a number two, three potential guy. And I mean, you locked him up on a 6 year, $55 million contract with a club option attached to it. Um, and Bayo had already been in the league a little bit longer, so he came up in the 2022 season, so he already had 2 full years of service time before he had gotten this. So in reality, you got an extra 3 years of control for this guy. But again, how much money did you really save on Bayo by doing this type of thing? It's probably not a lot. I mean, we're talking what he's $76 million is potentially what he was going to get in this contract range. And even if he develops into like a number two, number three type guy, unless he's like very consistently just throwing 180 innings, where you might get like $100 million contract, after the 2029 season here, 28 season, if he didn't sign this contract. Um, I don't know. I don't think you're saving a ton of money on these guys. Where you really save the money, where you save the dollars, that's like this is game changing for the franchise moving forward, by having these assets that are 5, 6 WAR players consistently, is on those top tier guys. And Bayo was a top 100 prospect, but he was like a 50s prospect. Cedar Rafael, I think he peaked at like 56 on the prospect rankings, overall. And I think when he was actually coming up his rookie season, he was less than that. Um, and so, yes, you save some money here, but like the top tier guys where you're at, where you want to be at. And so we're talking Kristian Campbell and Roman Anthony specifically here. And I have this document that I made up myself. And these are like recent notable extensions, that are out there. And I'll just scroll down a little bit here. Maybe I can thin this out. But recent notable extensions that have been given out to young players. And you can see very, very clearly how important it is to lock up players young. Because you've got guys like Luis Robert. He was, one of the trailblazers with this kind of thing. I know that Acuna and everybody else was in there, but I didn't include those. We're like Luis Robert was one of the first guys here, and he signed a $60 million contract with options that could bring you up to $100 million before he even had a day of service time. So this is a really decent contract for the White Sox, and even though he's been injured, they're still going to save some money here. So I think that this is a great example of why it's important to do this, because Luis Robert, like, he probably would still make more money than this $100 million over this time frame if they didn't extend him, right? Like, even with being injured and even with not producing at the level that they had hoped, he's still a very good player in the league, and he has a lot of potential to be still like an MVP caliber type guy if he can just have a nice full healthy season. So I'd argue that they still saved some money in this deal, even though they're looking to trade him. Now you look at the next couple guys here, and I think it's just wins across the board here. I included Cedar Rafaela in here just to give some example. It says 76 was his prospect ranking the year that he signed his extension, but I think the year before it was a little bit higher. But 76 was the prospect ranking here, and this is like the amount of money that he's getting paid over those years. So $50 million up to $66 million, and he had a little bit of service time already. Now the Tigers actually, I think, made a really good deal here with Colt Keith here, because again, he had 0 days of service time, so you don't know what you're getting out of these guys at this point. But they signed a $26.6 million contract for up to $66.6 million with Colt Keith when he was the number 22 prospect overall in baseball at the time. And when you're looking at what he was able to do over this last season. He had a really like solid rookie year. Like, is he going to develop into a star? Who knows? But for a 22-year-old coming up, he had 13 home runs, 260 batting average. He was an average hitter. 1.1 WAR is not great, but this is okay. Like for a first year, this is a pretty decent results, and there's still some room for growth here, especially when you look at like what he's been able to do over the minor leagues the previous couple seasons. Like in 2023, he had 306 batting average, a 932 OPS, 27 home runs, and 38 doubles. Like, if this is the first year you're getting out of him and he can develop into something closer to this, maybe a 20 home run, 275 batting average type guy, you are 1,000,000% saving money on guys that you're locking up for $28 million and potentially $66 million. Now, again, Tigers did fantastic on this deal, and it sounds like Colt wanted to get locked up because when you sign this type of deal, I don't think that Campbell or Anthony would accept a deal anywhere close to this. One, Cole Keith's the number 22 prospect. There's a big difference between being the number 22 prospect and being the number 1 and number 7 prospects in baseball. Like, there's a huge difference. Like, when you're talking, hey, this guy's the 50th best prospect and this guy's the 70th best prospect, like, yes, it's a larger gap than, maybe this, but it's really relative. Those guys are close. Being a top 1 prospect and a top 20 prospect is a massive difference. I mean, it might as well be being the difference between being a top 20 prospect and not even being ranked. Like, it's a big difference in terms of talent. So where could a contract possibly be? And I think that when you look at the realistic type contracts for like Roman Anthony and Marcelo Meyer or Roman Anthony and Kristian Campbell at this point, it's probably something more in this Corbin Carroll, Jackson Chourio range. And again, like the number 2 prospects, both of them were ranked the number 2 prospect in baseball when they signed these extensions. Corbin Carroll was a little bit older at age 23, but again, not old. And Corbin Carroll went out and had an amazing rookie season and won Rookie of the Year. And then Jackson Chourio didn't have a day of service time, and they signed him to $82 million. And you know what? That worked out pretty well because when you look at his numbers from this last season, Jackson Chourio finished 3rd in Rookie of the Year and had 3.8 WAR with 21 home runs, 22 stolen bases, 29 doubles, 275 batting average, and was 17% better than the league average hitter at age 20 years old. Now, is this a normal result for high-end prospects? I mean, I wouldn't say normal, but it's kind of normal. Like like when you're talking these top 2 or 3 prospects, like, and they come up and they have a full season and they give you 3 to 4 WAR, like, it's not that uncommon to see. I mean, we're talking guys like Wander Franco, who came up, and in his first season, in 70 games, he put up 3.4 WAR. He was the number 1 prospect forever for years. But again, like, he was top tier prospect. Julio Rodriguez, when he came up, he was one of the top prospects. What did he do in his first season? 6.2 WAR. Like, these are just things that like these top prospects have like more ability to just come up and perform right away. Now, are they going to do this? Are they all going to do this? No, not necessarily. But when we're talking guys like Roman Anthony and Kristian Campbell, there's a lot of data to back it up. So this is from TJ Stats here. And let's go to Roman Anthony. This is basically a Baseball Savant style page, but this is Roman Anthony's batted ball data at AAA. Like, insanely red here. Like, this is what you would want from elite hitting. And his weighted on base percentage, 100th percentile, 90th percentage exit velocity, 99th percentile, 108.4 miles per hour was his 90th percentage exit velocity. He hit the hardest ball that anybody in the Red Sox organization did last season. Harder than Rafael Devers, Tyler O'Neill, Jarren Duran, who's jacked. He hit the hardest ball in the Red Sox organization this last season. It was like 117 miles an hour. And so when we're talking guys that have like pedigree behind them, Roman Anthony's got some pedigree. And so you can feel a little bit more confident, like what type of extension to give him. And so let's go back over to this document. We're talking Roman Anthony specifically right now. We'll get to Campbell. But like, if you come to Anthony right now and you offer him a contract extension in spring training, one, you probably put him on the opening day roster. Absolutely. Like, he's not going to start in AAA if you sign him to a big extension. But what should it be? And it's probably something in this Carroll to Chourio range. Like, in my brain, it just feels like the Roman Anthony's not going to accept a contract unless it's over $100 million guaranteed. So I would say probably something more in this Corbin Carroll range. But if you come up at him and you're like, hey, we're going to give you an 8-year contract for $100 million, and then we want 2 options attached to it to bring it up to, and that could bring it up to 150, maybe $160 million, something in that range. And then so then you have control over him for 10 full seasons potentially, and he has all of the benefits of having this money because you never know what can happen to young players. And when you're a young guy and somebody comes at you and they offer you $150 million, it's hard to say no. But unless he has like a career altering injury, this is just good business to be able to do this type of thing. Because what happens when Roman Anthony comes up and he puts up this Julio Rodriguez type season the first couple of years? Well, guess what? He's no longer worth the contracts that you're giving him to Corbin Carroll and Jackson Chourio. He ends up being contracts like Fernando Tatis Jr. and Julio Rodriguez and Bobby Witt Jr. And look at the money increase here for some of these guys. Like Wander Franco signed a very value contract. We're not going to talk about him as a person, but he signed after 104 days. He still signed for $182 million. What if Roman Anthony comes up this season and say he plays 100 games and he puts up a 3.5 WAR? He's going to be worth this much money. His guaranteed money has doubled. I guarantee it. I promise you. It might be over a shorter time frame than this too. So instead of it being $182 million over an 11-year contract with a 12th-year player option, it's $182 million over 8 years. And then you have options that'll take it up to $250 million. And then this is the implications against the luxury tax long term. Because you already have a guy where it's like, hey, I can do this at the major leagues. But there's a risk involved with this. From the player's perspective and from the team's perspective. And that's where like that medium ground comes from when you sign these guys to these $100 million extensions as opposed to $200 million extensions. And if the Red Sox are just going to continue penny pinching here like they have been the past like 5 years, then they might as well just start signing some of these guys to these long-term extensions, because when you have these type of players, you're going to get them at a better AAV long term. So what type of contract potentially could we get for a guy like Roman Anthony, who's the number 1 prospect in all of baseball? Well, let's take a look back at this document. And again, we've talked pretty well about some of these contracts that Corbin Carroll, Jackson Chourio, Colt Keith kind of have gotten. And so where are we at from here? Well, I think that these frameworks, like I said before, are a good start for it. And if I was to offer a contract to like Roman Anthony and Kristian Campbell, this is probably around the range that I'm going to be kind of starting at. Because again, these guys have 0 days of service time, so there is risk on both sides involved with this. Now, and there's a lot of money to commit to somebody who's never played Major League Baseball before. But at the same time, if you're going to commit, and we'll just say $200 million guaranteed to these 2 players, well, that is like less than what Bobby Witt Jr. is going to end up making over his contract. That's definitely less than what Tatis is going to be making over his contract. And Tatis signed this contract 4 years ago now. Like 4 years ago, and he'd be making twice as much money over that time frame. And you know what people do when they look at the Tatis contract? They say it's a bargain. They still say it's a bargain for Tatis. And so when we're talking AAV here, you can get both of these guys. And if these contracts as I presented them here are given to these guys, you can get both of these guys for $27 million AAV over the next 8 years before the options kick in. And when we're talking like what the actual Red Sox payroll looks like, the Red Sox are paying $18 million to Masataka Yoshida right now. You could get Roman Anthony for less than that, guaranteed over the next 8 years, plus you have options attached on that to be able to extend the life of his contract. You could get both of these guys for the next 8 years for less than what you're paying Rafael Devers, and you might get more WAR out of him. Because while Rafael Devers is great, like he's never going to be that guy that gives you those like 8 WAR seasons. And I'm not saying that Roman Anthony and Kristian Campbell can't do that, but like they have a lot more potential to do it just because of their defensive upside. And Devers here, in his best season back in 2019, he had 5.4 WAR. And this was the juice ball time. So he had 54 doubles, 32 home runs. He's obviously still shown the ability to, hit 30 plus, push 40 home runs. So like I'm not concerned about that portion. But more realistically, he's a 3.5 to 4.5 WAR player regularly who's going to hit you 30 plus home runs, which is super valuable. But when we're talking guys like Roman Anthony here, and everybody kind of puts the easy comp to like Kyle Tucker. Kyle Tucker, he's already a 5.5 to 6 WAR player, and you know what? Last year he was on track to be like close to a 9 WAR ball player. like if he would have played a full season. And this is like in his fifth full season in the league. So even still, like Tucker's been, a top 20 player in the league for the past 3 seasons. But now he's going to be like a top 5, top 10 player the next few years. He could win an MVP next year, and that's even in the National League where it's totally stacked with legit players there. And so this is like, if this is the potential of like Roman Anthony that we have here, he is going to end up being a guy that is going to make a ton of money. He's going to be the next 500, $600 million contract if we wait another 5, 6 years for him. Like he's going to get that type of money easily. And so why would we even wait? Why would we even wait till opening day to be able to start talking to these guys about contract extensions? Because the longer you wait, the more you're going to have to pay. And to break down these contracts here, I think that like if you offer this contract to Roman Anthony, 125 million with a couple options attached to it, I think that there's a way that he could accept this for sure. 125 million, it's a lot of money, but I think he could accept it. $88 million for Kristian Campbell, that's a lot of money, but I think they accept it. I think that, and it's not far off, honestly. And then they're back to being free agents again at age 30 and 31. So they can go out and potentially sign another, $400 million on top of this. They're not leaving a ton of money on the table, but they're getting the security of knowing, hey, I have generational wealth for my family forever, which can't be understated when we're talking about these type of guys long term. So this is what I would do 100%. It brings up the luxury tax. This pretty much takes all of the luxury tax space that you have left. This would put you slightly over if you did that. And again, I said before that the Red Sox are probably wanting to stay under this luxury tax threshold, but I think that you can get at least one of these done, right? And that's possibly what they're waiting for right now, is to just see how the rest of the season plays out. Because if you can go and you're not adding a ton of money, say they add like another high leverage reliever and it costs them $15 million a year, but they don't end up getting that bat. Like if you can't find the bat that you're looking for, give it to Kristian Campbell here, and he can, and just tell the fan base, hey, he's going to be the opening day starter at second base, and it's going to be fine. People will be okay with that. Like it's not option A, it wasn't option B, but option C is pretty nice. And option C comes with a long-term extension. Comes to a long-term extension with one of your guys, one of the guys that we want to root for forever, one of the guys that we don't want to see get traded to the Dodgers in 5 years. And so this is just what I would be doing. I hope this kind of makes sense to you guys. Some of the other extensions that possibly could be out there, we've talked about this before, but Garrett Crochet, if they do not extend him prior to this next season, I have no idea what the front office is doing. No clue. And I think it's just a total mistake. Like they've made good moves and logical, defensible moves that I can get on board with, especially when I know that ownership is constricting money. I know that they are doing this. And Craig Breslow can only do so much. So he's kind of forced a little bit with that Chicago White Sox deal that I've been slightly critical of, but you still got a dog in Garrett Crochet, and if you extend him, it doesn't matter. But you got to extend him. Because I know the guy is going to go out this next season, and he's just going to completely ball out. And if that happens, and say Garrett Crochet pitches, 190 innings next season, and puts up 6 WAR, he's a $300 million pitcher overnight. He's probably a $400 million pitcher for Garrett Crochet. If he goes on the free agent market in 2 years at age 27, and he puts up 2 seasons of comparable to what he did last year, the guy could get $400 million. And you could maybe extend him for 6 years, $150 million right now. I really think so. Because if you extend him prior to this season, he's 25 years old right now, you give him a 6-year contract for $150 million. That's $30 million a year for a guy that admittedly only has 32 starts. Like he did amazing last year, but he only had 32 starts. So $150 million is showing a lot of commitment. But he gets the security that he has forever in case some injury does happen, which can happen with pitchers. But he's already had his Tommy John surgery, and a lot of pitchers, once they have their first, they're kind of okay for a while. Sometimes they have a second one right after, but I mean, he's had essentially a full season since then, and as far as I know, had really no injury concerns at all this last year. And so, if you go and give him a 6-year deal, He's a free agent again at 31. Like, what did Max Fried and Corbin Burns just get? They just got $200 million contracts. In 6 years, that's a $300 million contract. Then Crochet's pushing $500 million that he's made in his career. And I think that like he's fine with that because he gets the security of the next 6 years. And so I think a 5 or 6 year deal for Crochet, he takes that 100%, and the Red Sox would be happy with it, and they should be happy with it. 5 6 years, give him 125 to 150 million dollars, something like that. I think that he accepts it. But they need to be doing this, and they need to be able to push that luxury tax. And if they can't do all of these things and be able to add the pieces without going over the luxury tax, which I think that's the tiptoeing to try to get through this offseason. Because Garrett Crochet this next season, he's making $2.9 million, and if you extend him starting next season and he has an AAV of $25 million, you automatically go over the luxury tax. So maybe they're just waiting for the season to start and then they can have the extension begin in the 2026 season. That way the AAV goes up and over. But if you don't get that extension done in the first month of the season, like I don't even know, guys. Like it's just so frustrating. And we mentioned it earlier in the video, but it would cost $12 million to go to the second CBT threshold right here. $12 million to go $40 million over, and it doesn't cost you any draft picks, no draft picks until you hit the third one. You could do this for years, and it wouldn't cost you that much money. $12 million, and they just won't do it right now. They just won't. I really don't think they will. I would be very surprised if they do this next season. Could I see them in 2026 doing it? Once the Red Sox are coming off a 90-win season where they scrape into the playoffs and they get knocked out in the division series because you didn't have the talent that you could right now. Yeah, maybe. And I'm super optimistic about this, but I'm feeling a little heated about it. So I mean, it's very possible the Red Sox they win 90 games next season with this current roster if you add another batter. So I totally think it's doable. I think the Red Sox could be the second best team in the American League next season, potentially with this roster outside of the Yankees, just because the AL is so weak. But that's another story for a different time. So Crochet is another guy that you have to extend. And then you have other guys like Tristan Katz, which Katz, I think, is another one of those guys that, they should be looking to extend him. They're talking so much about trading him right now, and I bet you this is hurting him because he's already said in the past that he wants an extension with the Red Sox. But there's been so much talk about him getting traded this offseason. I don't know if he wants to have an extension now. Just knowing how the Red Sox have been handling things over the past few seasons and knowing their lack of ability to sign and extend players consistently over the last few seasons, if the Red Sox come to Tristan Katz after this offseason and they're like, hey, we want to sign you, we're going to give you a 7-year, $100 million extension, something in the range of what a Campbell or something. It's a little bit different because Katz has already got 2 years of service time. So the contract would be a little bit different. But if they want to give him probably a 7-year extension to get him back to be a free agent at age 32, it's probably going to cost you, $120 million? Maybe something like that. I don't think that's bad for Casas. I mean, he kind of has shown you what he can do. I don't know if it costs that much. He's a first baseman, and he's an average defensive first baseman, so maybe I'm overselling that. Maybe it's closer to $85-90 million. If it's 7 seasons or something like that. But you might have burned that bridge already with Casas. If the Red Sox had any equity with him, he's kind of lost a little bit of it just because of how they've been, treating him. And so out of all the other guys here that potentially could sign extensions, you got some weird ones in here. A very interesting one that I've thought about possibly is I'm really curious to see how Romy Gonzalez does this next year, because the Red Sox have extended some of these guys that are slightly weird. Garrett Whitlock's a good example. They gave him a 6-year contract extension that was pretty small. It was $22 million. At the time, he had only had one full relief season in. Romy Gonzalez seems like one of those guys that's just going to be pretty good for a period of time, and could be a fringe starter to even a better than good starter. If he kind of develops right. And nobody talks about him, and I'm talking about extending this guy who had one good season, which is kind of wild. But like when you look at his savant metrics here, it's kind of, interesting what he actually can do. Like his average exit velocity is awesome. His hard hit percentage is great. His bat speed's great, and he's super fast. And so like when you see these four things here, this is just telling me right now that this is due for some sort of correction. Because people don't hit the ball this hard and get these results over a full season year after year. And when you steal and you're this fast, like that's another asset on top of it. So he potentially could be like a 3-4 tool guy that's kind of just off your bench. And I'm wondering, well, would the Red Sox give him like a weird contract that's like hey, we're going to give you like a 4-year, $20 million contract? Like, would he accept something like that? Would the Red Sox even offer it? That's kind of like thinking a little bit more outside the box. I don't think a single person has ever even thought about we should extend Romy Gonzalez. And it might be a silly thing to talk about, but in reality, like the guy had a very solid last year, and he got hosed on like his actual results for what he should have gotten. This guy should have been batting, a lot better. He should have been doing a lot better overall, and he wasn't. So, um, anyway, that's kind of my talk today. Hopefully, some of this stuff makes sense. I mean, like Kristian Campbell's numbers here. I don't even think we went over these, but like this is why you want to extend these guys. Like we looked at Roman Anthony's here, and this is all red, but Campbell's is almost the same way. Like in reality, he's just hitting the ball super hard. He gets on base. He's fast. He walks a ton, which is great. Roman Anthony does all the same thing. Look at this, 99th percentile for walk for Roman Anthony, 100th percentile for weighted on base average, and 99th percentile for average exit, or for 90th percentile exit velocity. Like when you are top dog in these three different types of categories, power, on base percentage, walks, I mean, these are the guys that you want to just keep forever. I mean, and I really hope they get at least one of them. I mean, ideally, I would like it to be Roman Anthony, but if you get Kristian Campbell for a contract that's similar to this, $88 million, 115, I think he would be silly not to consider it before making his opening day, before making his major league debut. Like he'd have to consider it, right? He'd have to like look at this and be like, that's a lot of money. And maybe he tacks on an extra year here, and I would be interested. It's like, okay, well, say we turn this into a $20 million, and we get rid of that as an option. We just turn this into like another year here, and then this becomes 108. That feeds the ego a little bit more, right? And then you can say, hey, I had a $100 million contract guaranteed. And the Red Sox might do that because then, again, he's still only a free agent at 32. Maybe there's no options attached to it. I don't know. It's something that I'd consider doing. $100 million for 9 years of Kristian Campbell. That's nothing. That's nothing, guys. But anyway, hopefully some of this stuff made sense. Hopefully you enjoyed kind of what I'm talking about here. I make these weird spreadsheets. I do different things all the time. I have this one that I don't even know if I referenced in this video. But we do this stuff pretty often. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll do more of these things in the future. We'll talk about different topics. If you want to suggest some topics in the comments, feel free to. I read and try to react to as many comments as I possibly can for all of you guys. And yeah, it's been a fun one, and we'll do something again soon. So Happy New Year to everybody, and talk to you next time. Bye.